Now I'm pleased to welcome Seattle 4 member and your VP of Programs, Beth Knox, to both introduce our main speaker and program for today. Beth, the podium is yours.
Great. Thank you, President Jeff. It's a pleasure to be here today. And it's also a pleasure to introduce your speakers for today's program. We're going to start with Karen Thomas. She is an architect and the Regional Managing Principal and Corporate Board Director for Gensler, the world's largest architecture and design firm. Her work includes a portfolio of projects with top Fortune 500 companies leading high-profile projects in the office, mixed-use, retail, hospitality, and aviation sectors, both domestic and internationally. While often traveling, at least in our previous lives, Karen is devoted to the Pacific Northwest and Seattle and has served on a number of boards to help our city flourish, including Arts Fund, Visit Seattle, and Blodell Reserve. She was elected board chair of my organization, the Seattle Sports Commission, in 2018 and works hard to create an economic impact for the region. She's been on the architecture faculty at the University of Washington for over 10 years and was recently named a 2020 Woman of Influence recipient by the Puget Sound Business Journal. Now joining Karen is a fellow Seattle 4 Rotarian, James Wong. James is a seasoned entrepreneur, investor, and founder of multiple successful companies, including the co-founder and CEO of Vibrant Cities. He's been an active real estate and technology investor for over 20 years, and within the last 7 years has developed vibrant and smart multifamily mixed-use apartment communities in both Seattle and Portland. James is a thought leader, speaker, and writer on multifamily real estate development, sales management, technology, and entrepreneurship. He was the Small Business Association's Minority Small Business Champion of the Year and winner of the Puget Sound Business Journal's 40 Under 40 Award. He's an enthusiastic Rotarian and served as a past board member. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our speakers. And Karen, I know we're going to start with you. Would you like me to share the slides to start off with, or do you want to say a few comments first?
No, that would be great, Beth. If you want to just put up that first one, Our Cities, Our Future, I think is the first in our deck. And can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay.
Loud and clear.
The virtual world, you know, sometimes you go in and out and not sure if everyone's hearing you and seeing you. So thank you so much. And thank you for already inspiring me today in these first 15 minutes between the music and Joel sharing and reminding me about Babylon. You know, what a fantastic few moments to start our day or our time together off today. And thank you for being with us when I'm looking outside and seeing this incredible weather out there. It's hard to believe that you are all choosing to spend your time with James and I, but we're very happy to be here. We are going to attempt to share some quick perspective and some thoughts very quickly about cities in general, about our future here in the Seattle area. I think we're each going to try to spend about 10 or 15 minutes just to give you some perspective on Seattle's positioning for what we believe is going to be a decade of revitalization coming up. And then hopefully we'll have a few minutes towards the end to certainly engage in any conversation or answer any questions that you may have. I do want to first back out just a bit, though, to establish some context for what we're working within and what we see ahead. You know, the changes that we have seen, in particular with our workforce over this past year, are things that we are going to have to be so cognizant of as we start to shift in the norms that we are now creating for our future. So at Gensler, as Beth just introduced, you know, we are a design and architecture firm. We have 6,000 practitioners around the world. We sit in 50 different offices. And our mission has always been to enrich that human experience. It's not just about walls and roofs and creating cities, but it's about creating that human experience in our cities and in our communities. I do want to give you the spoiler alert, at least from me right up front, that cities are not disappearing. Cities are something that is going to be with us, I believe, for many centuries to come. These are we have right now a lot of anxieties, obviously. We still see them, we still feel them in our downtowns, in our storefronts, in our buildings. However, the adaptation, the awareness, the inclusivity that we now have an awareness, deep awareness around, is what we're going to have to bring forward to propel our cities forward. Our cities are absolutely rooted in community, in commerce, and in that shared experience. So with the bulk of the world cities that we've been developing over 100 years, most actually cities have come to their fruition in the last 100 years, which is kind of amazing to think about that much development having happened so recently. But we've been designing buildings to last for 50, 75, 100 years or longer. But in fact, our cities are not static like our buildings. Our people are not static. We have to become more mobile, more recognizing the unrest that we've had in our cities. The ground is not static. We have got seismic activity, sea level rise, landslides. The air is not static, but carbon emissions, the pollution, the smoke, and the fire that have all really come to our full attention, I think, so acutely over the last year. So it's our buildings and our communities that have to change. And then what we have to go through in terms of change in the next couple of years is going to be really rapid as we address the climate changes, as we address technology and the accessibility that's going to be required. So it's all about creating flexibility in buildings, creating new buildings that can multifunction, connecting the indoor, outdoor spaces and repurposing them and connecting them in meaningful ways, and guiding our mobility and transportation plans so that they will guide the overall success of our cities. So, I have the belief that the greatest form of sustainable practices is to recycle our downtown and existing buildings into a bright and what I believe is going to be a very exciting future. So let's just run through a few slides here that I do want to share with you on the next one there, Beth. At Gensler, we've got a significant research institute as part of our organization, and we've been conducting real-time surveys and analyzing data at numerous points throughout this pandemic year. So I wanted to share some of this data. It literally is fresh off the press in several of these sections. But I want you to be able to see in context of what is happening around the world and then how we're shifting here at home in the Puget Sound area. What you're going to first see is a set of data that we were looking at for primary cities, Singapore, London, New York, and San Francisco, where there's tens of thousands of residents and business people that we surveyed, and looking at those and tracking Seattle when you're seeing these results, very similarly to San Francisco's survey results. Next. So, as you know, millions of office workers shifted from home with constant video meetings, juggling the demands of life outside the office and children and doing everything that we're doing virtually. And our downtowns and central business districts just emptied out. But it wasn't just here in Seattle. This is going on, obviously around the world. Our downtowns became eerily silent for all of us. But as the pandemic continued, people's satisfaction with their living situation clearly declined in each of the surveys we were surveying. Generationally, we found that the younger residents report more dissatisfaction than older cohorts in most of these large cities. The millennial satisfaction with their living situations actually dropped more than any other cohort by 11%. Next. So what's going on with the millennials? Why did they have the steepest drop in satisfaction? And what we were finding out is that the millennials are actually dealing with a lot of pain points. They are most likely the ones that have lost their jobs, living paycheck to paycheck. And like the Gen Xers, they were most likely to be living with the young children at home, which was also one of the strongest indicators of a low level of living satisfaction. Next. So we all read the headlines about the mass exodus of cities like New York and San Francisco for that matter. But our City Pulse survey is finding that we are looking at the pandemic as now just an accelerant rather than a determinant. And this is in people's desires to already shift away from the global cities full time. So people were already thinking of leaving their cities before the pandemic hit. So on the left side, you're going to see that, in fact, 3 out of 4 San Francisco residents were already thinking about leaving. And on the right side there, you see that about 80% of Gen Xers were already thinking about residing at least outside of their global cities before the pandemic hit. Next. And then we wanted to know who wanted to leave their cities. Again, the millennials were the largest cohort considering this. And in fact, nearly half the people who are thinking of leaving Singapore were millennials. Next. Who else leaving the city? It turns out that people with the youngest children under the age of 12 is what we found, are most likely to want to move than the people who do not live with young children, particularly in New York, and then similar, of course, in London and San Francisco, as you can see here. Sometimes these are people leaving a city and only leaving for a second tier or smaller city nearby, and often still within reach of a major hub city. Next. So we have millennials and young families struggling in a pandemic that was accelerating trends that were already set in motion. And this is where it starts to get pretty interesting for cities like San Diego, Denver, Austin, Raleigh, and most likely Seattle, which is a city that we still are going through the survey results right now. We asked those who were thinking about moving out of their global cities, where did they want to move to next? And as you can see on this diagram, over 2/3 of the respondents did want to leave their global city for smaller, less dense areas, particularly in the smaller cities, and or a return to the suburbs. Next. So while the pandemic may have been an accelerant to people's desires to leave these global cities, it's people's primary drivers for moving that remain the same. We found affordability, convenience, and safety from crime as the 3 top drivers. And certainly these are then the issues that we need to address. Next. So these findings now are consistent with the population migration trends that we've also been analyzing over the last few years, where people are leaving the high cost, large global cities for the smaller cities that offer a high quality of life. So what we've seen during this pandemic this last year was that among the cities, there were definitely winners and losers in this. You know, cities like San Francisco and New York saw many residents reevaluating the compromises that they were making to live in these locations. But then we saw cities like Denver, Austin, and even the Puget Sound region still attracting millennials and young families. And that's why this pandemic has really emphasized the rise of the second tier city. San Francisco still showing that some of its strongest outmigration to Austin, Denver, and the Seattle or Puget Sound area. Seattle is still showing in migration, as you can see, we're on the chart there about 1/3 of the way in on the right. We're still showing in migration and still showing a natural growth. It's a nice balanced migration, and some migration still going out to the surrounding suburbs. So the new normal on the next slide, looking at what the future is for central business districts and downtown. Next slide, Beth. Thanks. So we asked people what activities would they feel most comfortable resuming as economies begin to reopen. So I know I'm going really quickly through these, so I'm just trying to give you the highlights of each of them. But if you look at the greens there, that's where people are most comfortable. They're most comfortable grocery shopping, and they are comfortable returning to work and school and shopping in stores and malls and staying in hotels as the primary zones of comfort. These numbers are rapidly going up just from last minute survey results that we're getting in just over the last few weeks as people become fully vaccinated. So this tells us that cities and their downtowns are certainly not an endangered species, but one what I think as with enormous possibilities and new possibilities ahead of us. Next, Beth. And then you'll see here in the oranges and reds what people are still not comfortable with. And with this, it's getting to and from our downtowns using public transit. During the pandemic, we saw a sharp rise in micro mobility where people could walk, bike, use bike share and scooter share. And while transit continues to be a concern, we do believe that there's going to be an even greater demand for walkability and the co-location of different uses that won't require transit. Where the 20-minute city we often talk about is where inside of a city, you can be working, you can be living, you can be walking and accessing any part of the city and its offerings. Next. So we just conducted a third city pulse and are very busy analyzing that data coming up. But I wanted to give you just a quick taste of some of the things that we're finding. We included 10 more cities in this next cohort, and it's including Atlanta, Austin, Denver, Paris, Shanghai, and Mexico City. And these adjustments that are being made to their urban lives during the pandemic are things that they would like to see continued post-pandemic. So in some of those cities that I just named, what they're asking for and looking for is that more sidewalk, outdoor dining that they've been experiencing is something that is going to become part of their ongoing life. And in the cities where they've been heavily reliant on public transit, these residents are asking for more of the microbility, as we call it, the small transit options. But in all 10 cities, there's still an overwhelming support for continued mask wearing, availability of hand sanitizers out in public places, and continuing to limit the density in the performance venues, stores, restaurants, and the other indoor public venues near term. Next. So in our latest workplace surveys, the hybrid workplace is what is rising right to the top. This does not mean that the office is dead. It is absolutely going to remain as part of our rich fabric of the way we live and work. It will need to be repurposed to leverage everything new that we've come to appreciate in our work from home situations and having the flexibility, but also then bringing back what we've deeply missed in our downtown connections and in our office connections. So there's going to be a swing in types of space that are mostly utilized, like collaboration zones, amenity spaces, learning environments, social meeting places, and then dedicated safe areas for that focus work. So it's a different way of working, but it's a blend of the flexibility and being in the office. Next. So we have a moment, I believe. We've got a big moment in front of us, and it's an opportunity to design what our society and what our cities look and feel like with a raised and urgent awareness. So our cities are going to be changing and transforming. Will they be the same again? History tells us no. Historically, pandemics, however dire, have forced cities to change, but to change for the better. And that's what we're looking forward to doing. So I'm just a couple of closing comments here going forward, Beth. On Seattle in particular, I just want to emphasize my belief that we here in Seattle are set up for a return because we've got some very natural parts of our community and infrastructure that are set up to propel us forward. Next. One of the things is just our geographical location and opportunities that we have. Like many coastal downtowns, we have the restrictions to our downtown growth. We've got water on one side, we've got I-5 on the other. SLU is built out, but we do have opportunities and big emerging opportunities going north up to the U district and to North Seattle. We're going to see big changes happening in Seattle Center just over the next year or two, driving a new mid-rise commercial office and lifestyle sector there, and with the state arena changes. And then SoDo, I still believe, is a huge opportunity as we we have to bring some visionary thinking down to SoDo of how we overcome zoning and constructability changes. And then very quickly through these next slides, Beth, repositioning, as I was talking about, our primary form of sustainable reuse is taking our downtown building stock and repurposing it in new mixed programs. An example of this is Pacific Place. We actually just did a major renovation on this project and it never got to open. Excuse me, the week that was to open was when we went home. So the ownership right now, however, is already exploring redistributing use in this building, resi, office, retail, a new combination. And I think that's what we're going to see more and more of. Next, street front diversity, I think, is going to be critical. Retail has certainly taken one of the hardest hits in downtown, but what's going to be so important is to look at what we are incentivizing at our street front ground planes of our downtown buildings. We have had such a lack of diversity at that street front, and it has been so incentivized to build nothing but retail that I believe that allowing some office program to come down to the ground plane is going to help with that vibrancy to then create really diverse spaces and community spaces, minority-owned businesses, maker spaces, to create a vibrancy at the street level. I think is going to be critical for us. Next, the return to office, we already talked about. We see at least half, if not more, people that do want to come back downtown, but they just want to reserve the right to flexibility. And I think we'll see that number continuing to go up over time. Next, in transportation, we all know that we still have a lot of work ahead of us. Ridership has been down dramatically in the last year, 60, 70, 80, 90% down in different forms of transportation. But again, we're seeing this creep up inch by inch. And we've got to get people out of their cars, reducing emissions, increasing the mobility, getting north and south connected around our region. In hospitality next, another obviously hard hit sector. Occupancies rates, had dropped down to less than 20% in the city and all the way down to the airport, but we're already seeing these come back up. It was just reported this week that we are now over 30% occupants in occupancy for our hotels. This is the highest that we've been since last March. And air travel is starting to come up very quickly now over the last couple of weeks, again, with vaccinations. I know, I think it was like 28,000 people actually passed through CTEC last week, which is one of our highest numbers that we've had in a year. So we're going to continue to see business travelers. We're going to have tourism. Sports is good, right, Beth Knox? We still have projects that are under construction and coming, things that were on hold, but they have been released and we are designing and we're about to go into construction. You see a couple of Citizen M hotels here. We've got one that just opened in Westlake, another one that's about to complete construction down on Alaskan Way near Pioneer Square. So next, the Cascadia corridor growth. I've only got a couple more slides here, James, and you're going to be up and running. I think we have to remember that another superpower of ours is this connectivity that we have as a region. We are very well positioned to create a strong shared economy from Portland all through Cascadia up to Vancouver. It's our cities that are attracting the best in talent and innovation, and that is not going to stop anytime soon. I also want to mention that, we see Bellevue as a complement to the regeneration and continued growth of Seattle, not a detriment to our long-term health. Bellevue's growth will enhance this success of the entire region. Emerging sectors, next, Beth, science, biotech, AI, higher education, tech is continuing to diversify here. We are going to continue to see the kind of new ventures and startups that we've been seeing in the past. We are still the Mecca, I promise. Design in the works on the next slide there. I'm going to share this. Hopefully we can do this at another time, but what's coming in the world is mind-blowing. I happen to be able to see it because it's already on our drawing boards, but the kind of spaces, the kind of connectivity, the kind of inclusivity that we are designing into our work literally puts a smile on my face. I'm so excited about what we are doing to create connected urban environments, with a particular focus on the human experience, and it's inclusive, it's resilient, it's sustainable. But as importantly for me is recapturing the joy of the human spirit and how and why we come together to spend our times together each day. So lastly, making community, I have to say in Seattle, we have so much at our fingertips that have always been part of our heritage. Sports, Beth is going to fill you in someday on the incredible stuff we have ahead of us in the next 5 years. Music and arts, it's in our history, it's in our blood. Conventions, we're thank goodness we're coming back up. I believe we have 77 or 78 groups now booking or rebooked from cancellations over the next couple of years. We are always going to have our landmarks, our Space Needle, waterfront, mountains, the natural environment. These natural assets are at the root of us being an incredible city, a world-class city. And I'll close with it being mostly about our people. We have an enormous wealth of intellectual and creative capital. The community volunteers, the philanthropists, the engaged individuals like all of you. We have an extraordinary community in Seattle. So I know James and I both believe that opportunity is around the corner, and we are designing it and getting ready to build it right now. So thank you for the opportunity to open up there.
All right, thank you, Karen. So James, we will turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Karen. It's good to have some real surveys and stats from Karen and her research team, and I'm just going to get into more of the data for specifically Seattle and a little bit in Bellevue. So I'm a fellow Rotarian. Okay, when I joined Seattle Rotary, I was a young buck, and I guess now I'm the older buck. Okay, so but I'm really glad to be part of this group, and it's one of my favorite loves in life, being part of this Rotary Club and the great work that we got to do. So I'm an immigrant. I was born in China. I came to Seattle when I was 10 years old. I've grown up in this city, and I've also seen the city grow up. 10 years ago, when people talk about large cities in America, they talk about New York, LA, San Francisco, Chicago. Today, they talk about New York, San Francisco, Seattle, LA. We're part of the conversation. Okay. Seattle, MSA, is one of the most economically vibrant metropolis, not just in the US, but in the world. You see that? Okay. And Washington State is one of the best states in America overall for living, working, and playing. So despite our politics and some of, like our homeless issues and some very tough issues we have to go through, we're still the best state to live, work, and play. That's pretty amazing, okay? So I'm going to share a lot of data in the next few minutes, so hold on tight. Most of this information is derived from our friends at JOL and their research team. I live and breathe this data because we have to make tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars of investment risk using data. So this is not just like data for data's sake, right? My livelihood is in this stuff, okay? So this is real life stuff. So let's get to it. So I want to share this, right? While the rest of the MSAs in the country and the world are struggling with job loss, we've added 25,900 jobs in the Seattle MSA over the last 6 months. 11 of the Fortune 500 companies, partly because 11 of the Fortune 500 companies are headquartered in Seattle's MSA, okay? And we are now the second largest technology hub in the world behind Silicon Valley, okay? So what to put things in perspective, right? There are arguably the top 5 tech companies in the world are Apple, Amazon, Google, Facebook, and Microsoft. 2 of the top 5 are based in our region, headquartered here, but the rest of them have major presence here. Facebook said, based in Silicon Valley, Facebook said in the next 5 years, they're going to have more employees in Seattle than in Silicon Valley. Okay? Our employment growth rate is 4x the national average in the last 5 years. So that bodes well for our recovery and where we're going, right? So it's not just about Microsoft or Amazon. We have some of the world's best known brands headquartered here. Eric Nordstrom was with us last week, right? We also have Costco, Starbucks, Alaska, to name a few. I mean, these are household well-known companies, right? I was part of I studied at Harvard, and my classmates, they know Seattle as like the brand, the retail brand city, in addition to our technology. Okay, so we're really known for like the forefront for doing good retail and taking care of the customer service. So according to Forbes, we're the #1 best place for business and career. And this is why you're seeing real estate prices go up. Okay, we're the #4 US city and #7 in the world. Out of hundreds of top tier cities in the world, Seattle is #7 where the world's capital wants to invest. So that's why you're seeing billions, okay, hundreds of billions of dollars being poured into our city, because now they feel just as safe investing in Seattle as they do investing in New York, in London, in Paris, Tokyo. We're holding our prices. Okay. So we have the most cranes of any city. We're ranked #1 in the crane index in Seattle. Last count I think we're like 63 cranes, okay? 41% of the residents in our city are between the age of 25 and 39. That's quite a young city with a lot of vibrancy. There's a lot of growth. A lot of people want to move here. We're a pretty cool city for people to want to, live in, okay? So we have, talking about downtown, drilling down into downtown, we have 60,000 households, families, not just residences, okay, but households living in downtown right now. You want to know why our downtown will continue to be robust and growing? Well, in the last 7 years, we absorbed $7.6 million, 7.6 million square feet of office, net absorption. So, what that means is, there's always companies moving back and forth, right? Renting, leasing, but this is brand new square footage that is taken up in our city in the last 7 years. So if you take an average of 100 square feet per employee, that's 76,000 high-paying jobs that we've added in just the downtown area. Okay, so I want to share, a corollary, right? Okay, so what's the #1 driver for real estate prices going up? #1 driver, jobs. So if you want to see real estate prices go up and you want to invest where the jobs are. In Seattle area and our MSA, that's where the jobs are growing, and they're great jobs. Okay. So I would be remiss if we didn't speak about downtown Bellevue, or Bellevue, our neighbor. Okay, so Bellevue, powerhouse, they're killing it. Okay, New York, I said New York City screw up on Amazon was, and where Amazon wanted to go and put their HQ to. Well, that's our region's big benefit, right? That's our boom. I had lunch with one of the council members from Bellevue last week. And we said, we talked about all the great things that's happening in our region, especially what's happening with Amazon and, what they're going to do to that city. We joked that, we didn't even have to give much, don't tell Amazon this, okay? I think this is recorded, but don't tell Amazon. We didn't really have to pay much concession. All these other cities are bidding for them. We got those 25,000 jobs without pretty much any concessions from Bellevue and our region. So I tell you, I've been scratching my head trying to figure out how to make an investment in real estate in Bellevue, okay? But the price of land, code requirements, rising construction costs, nothing seems to pencil. It's really tough for development right now. So I saw a comment in the chat that, yeah, affordability is a serious issue. It certainly is, okay? And with, I think construction reform, code reform, it needs to happen. We need to be able to create better supply so that we can actually lower the cost. So, however, okay, the people that are buying in Bellevue, they're speculating. They're betting in the future. So 5 to 10 years from now, right, like most real estate, wow, that was a smart decision. Right now, you can't get it to pencil. There is no yield investing in Bellevue, at least, from my own math on it. So now I want to share that, Bellevue is doing a lot of things right that I think our Seattle politicians can learn from. I am a compassionate and caring person, but we can't have, I know we'll probably touch this because we're talking about regeneration of Seattle. We cannot have 12,000 homeless people and 3,800 that are unsheltered. Okay, in January, there was a stat, 3,800 that are unsheltered, run our beloved city amok. The policies, the politics, I think we're reacting. I like what Compassion Seattle is doing, okay? But this is a very serious issue. And I know we'll probably have some questions about that, but I want, I know we'll talk about that. So we have a robust economy in many respects. It's, Costco is the #2 largest retailer in the world, right? It's headquartered here. We got Nordstrom, Starbucks. However, I want to share some stats about tech that some of you may not know, okay? In one of the worst economies in our lifetime last year in 2020, 60% of the office leases that were signed by tech companies. I think that is a huge influence, okay? Now, software developer is one of the Seattle's most common job title. Did you know that we actually have more software engineers by title than in Silicon Valley. That bodes well, right? We are the number, Silicon Valley is still the king in terms of investment and the number of tech startups they're starting, but we're the second largest technology hub in the world. And I would not bet against that tidal wave, and we've hit critical mass. So that tidal wave of helping our region grow, it's coming, it's here, it's going to get even more big in time, and so we got to get ready for it. We are the #1 metro area for STEM professionals in the U.S. Okay, that's a pretty amazing stat, if you ask me. So now Bellevue is kicking Seattle's butt in a lot of things. Okay, however, we're Seattle Rotary. Okay, we're powerful Seattle Rotary. So the retail and tourism still happens mostly in Seattle, at least right now, and maybe for the near term. Okay, if you look, there's lots of sales happening in Seattle, and most of the major retail destinations, they're based in Seattle. Most of the tourist attractions, I have some slides on tourist attractions and things like that. We have 10 million visitors to Pike Place Market a year. That's phenomenal, phenomenal for our region. So what does that mean for me personally? I just want to get down to the, a little bit into the details. Here, Vibrant Cities, we have 5 projects under construction. So Vibrant Cities, we build multifamily and condos in the Seattle and Portland area. We have 5 under construction now, worth about budget is about $230 million. 4 of them are in Seattle. 1 of them is in Portland. Portland is like Seattle's cute little brother, I like to say, but that's for another story. Okay, but I'm a big fan of Portland and the growth it has. But Seattle, we're definitely investing big in Seattle. So I want to go into one project in particular. Okay, this is a project that we're building. It's called Infinity Shore Club on West Seattle's Alki. I went to middle school and high school in West Seattle, and this is right on Alki Beach. 10 years ago, I would not have built this. Okay, I would not have the guts or the rationale to build a product like this in Seattle, wondering if there were buyers, because this is a luxury product. Okay, this product is on the same specs as, say, the Four Seasons in downtown Seattle, but it's right on the beach. We have the same designers, and the award-winning pool. There's 2 infinity pools in Seattle. Actually, if you guys are in the know here, we need to be able to change our rules so that we can actually make it easier to create cool pools in Seattle. But we have these old codes that doesn't allow you to build cool stuff. Okay, so there's only 2 infinity pools in Seattle. One's in Four Seasons, and the other one is at Infinity. Okay, and it's the same designer that we use. Okay, so the idea is that this project, it's only 37. This is the largest waterfront project in all of the Seattle, greater area, including Bellevue, Kirkland, all that. Okay, 37 units, average price over $2 million. Now, its average price per square feet is about $1,400. Now in Seattle, people, oh, that's so expensive, right? Okay, but if you look, we did our research, and if you look from Vancouver, all the West Coast cities, from Vancouver to San Francisco, LA, Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, San Diego. If you look at the price per square feet of all of those cities, they're selling these types of products for $2,500 to $3,500 a square foot. Our neighbor up north in Vancouver does not have the type of economy that we have, right? But they're selling their real estate for way more. So my point here is this to you guys, okay? People complain about prices being high in Seattle. This is just the beginning because of our economic power, the engine that's happening in our Seattle. That's why people it's mispriced, right? They say, oh, I list a house for 1.2 million. But then when I list it out, there's multiple bids that bid it up to 1.7, 1.8 million. No real estate professional, right, would actually say, oh man, how could I have missed the pricing that much by 30%? However, what that tells you is there's, the people that are coming from outside see there's still good value in Seattle. So unfortunately, right, or the fortunate part is that our region is growing. There's a lot of things happening, but our real estate prices, you're going to see it go higher. I can't tell you, what's going to happen in the next, few years, 2-3 years, but in the next 10, 15 years, you're going to see this. It wouldn't surprise me if we double or more than double. I'll tell you this, as Seattle, in the world great cities of where our real estate per square meter fits, okay, we are in between. Like the #1 most expensive city is Hong Kong. Okay, their price per square meter is about $28,000 per square meter.
Say, James.
Yeah.
This is probably a good note to pivot to some questions, or we're going to completely run out of time. So wonderful overview. Thanks for those
I'm gonna finish
amazing insights.
Okay, I'm gonna finish with one last thought, and then I'll stop. So Hong Kong is $28,000 per square feet. Seattle, our prices are in between. Okay, then you have London, Israel, Japan, France, right? Our prices is in between Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia and Chile, Santiago, Chile. So just to put that in perspective, right? We're close to where Costa Rica, San Jose, Jamaica, Kingston, that's our prices. So with that was actually my last slide. So we're still investing in Seattle, but just know that, Seattle's got a lot of room to grow. So that's Q&A.
Karen and James, thank you both very much. That was a tremendous amount of information. And unfortunately, we've only got 1 minute left, so we're not going to have time for questions. But I did want to say that our theme for today was downtown regeneration, and you have really reinforced with us that the downtown is solid, that it is going to be regenerating. People do want to return to shopping, that a large percentage will be doing a combination of working from home and working from the office. And so that isn't the concern. The concern that I hear from the presentation today, that many of our questions are in the queue, in the chat. And if you have a chance to look at them, I'd appreciate it if you could respond to some of them. If you have time, that'd be great. But truly, our challenge here is, where are people going to live, and where is the affordable housing outside of the city as well as in the city? We're seeing the increases in the suburbs, which is where people go. Pierce and Snohomish counties are experiencing astronomical increases, and that's going to do nothing but grow as they're running out of space as well. And that's going to push people further and further out. So we have some real challenges ahead of us. They're good ones, but they're tough ones. And I think you've done a great job today. Thank you very, very much. We really appreciate that. And again, thank you all for your questions. I'm sorry we ran out of time. I do want to take a minute, though, and reach out and make sure that we recognize our sponsors who help to make this all this information available to us. First of all, I would like to reach out and thank Bob Alexander, our gold sponsor, who once again continues to write that check to allow us to put these meetings online. Bob, thank you for your continuing generosity. We sincerely appreciate it. In addition, I'd also like to reach out and thank our other sponsors. From Morgan Stanley, Joel Farrell, our bronze sponsor. Thank you, Joel, for everything you do. Also, Dominique Musafa, our bronze sponsor from Seattle Divorce Options. Thank you very much for your support of the club. And Columbia Bank, who's also a bronze sponsor for us. Thank you for your generosity as well. We sincerely appreciate it. Jacobson, Jarvis and Company, certified public accountants, who is also a bronze sponsor. And of course, our NetTech Mac Braylon. Special thanks from the Seattle Rotary office for your IT support. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you all. Thank you all for what you do for us. We sincerely appreciate it.